Hey, Cara. Welcome to the
Hi,
podcast.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be chatting with you today. It's funny. So you and I met through a platform called Lunch Club, right? Which basically is the space where you can have like a free spot on your calendar and meet people and just talk. And that's what we're talking about today, of like meeting
Yeah,
people and talking, because this is just a crucial skill, having a business, just connecting with others on a one-to-one basis, and also,
yep.
letting yourself be led to the right connections, I think, as well.
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, I'm excited to chat
Yeah,
with you about that. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
that the lunch club thing's really interesting. I think you were like my second call, maybe, or something like
Right.
that. And I've met so many random weird people. Not that they're not weird, but like so many people out so far outside my network that I'm like, I would never have talked to that man in Spain just on my own. Like,
Right.
so, anyways, I think it's really cool. I am a marketing strategist. I focus primarily on relationship marketing strategy now, but my background is in content marketing. I started out as a health and wellness writer um, back like 10, 15 years ago, working for agencies who had clients like Gold's Gym and other big franchises who needed lots and lots of content, but they needed experts to write it. And that
Cool.
kind of led into strategy because I wanted to know like if what I was doing was working. And so I worked in that realm for 10, 15 years and recently just kind of pivoted my business to focus on relationship marketing after realizing that that was what I was actually really good at, not so much like just the traditional marketing.
Right. I love this relationship marketing. And that's like when we were talking in Lunch Club, it caught my attention because it's something I've been particularly focused lately in my business. I mean, always wanted to have like a network of people, because I realized for me as an SEO expert, the majority of my clients come through referrals. But I was always struggling, and I mean, this is what I want to talk to you about, is like I was struggling to identify like which of these relationships do I want to water. And I found myself just having calls, like trying to maintain with relationships with everybody instead of kind of
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the ones that just felt right and that were not always like logically right, but just like felt like easy. So
Mm-hmm.
what's your thoughts around that? Like if someone's starting to want to get more referrals or they're wanting to build their network, how do they distinguish like the context of like, this is the one that's not going to be draining, or this is the one that's going to like
Mm-hmm.
feel good and help me in the long run?
Well, I think the first part of it starts with who you are, like as a person and who your core, you're always going to align with people who share your core values. And to a certain extent, personality and temperament play into this a lot. My background, I have a degree in psychology and I've always been super fascinated by people and like, why does this person rub me the wrong way? They're like the nicest person, or why do I get along with this person? We just click, right? And
Right.
a lot of that has to do with like call it energetics or whatever, but there's this like vibe that people give off, and a lot of it has to do with just like their temperament and their personality and what they care about. And if you care about the same things that I care about, I'm going to be much more willing to help you than I will be somebody who doesn't care about like the same kind of change in the world that I want to see, or progressing the types of people that I want to win. So I
Right.
start with getting really clear on who I am first and what I care about and like the change that I want to see in the world. And then I look for people like that, and then take it one step further and look for people in that genre who are either centers of influence, or so like somebody who has the same kind of client that I have or influence over that client.
Right.
And then and then like a lot of it, honestly, some of it's just like how I feel about people, and I let the universe kind of guide a lot of it for me. Like sometimes you see a comment on someone's thread on LinkedIn and you're like, that person just seems really cool. And then I'll go
Right.
check out their website and I'm like, oh my God, we have this thing in common. And I'll reach out and I'll say, hey, we have this thing in common. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. Let's have a conversation.
Right.
And sometimes it goes nowhere. But a
Right.
lot of
Right. Right.
times it turns into a relationship. And um, I think you water the people who you care about. So,
Right. Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I guess what I was finding is like I'm very I tend to have like people pleasing tendencies. So what was happening with me is like I just wanted to be friends with everybody. And then I got to a point where that was so draining and I was like, this isn't gonna work, right? Because there are people who I can't vibe with, or like it's draining, right?
Mhm.
So what I shifted there was, like you said, like just trusting my intuition. And even though that person might not even have anything directly related to do with my business, um just trusting the energy of it, and then also trusting those points in common, whether like they're an expat or they like to travel like me or they like
Yeah.
dogs or whatever, right? It's
Yeah.
like then you can, you can start to put some lot. Sometimes there's logic to it and sometimes there isn't, but that's the beauty
Right.
of humanness, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
like part of that I guess might feel out of control, but it's so there's so much richness in those relationships, and that's what's led to, like when I started this podcast, when I started to build those one-to-one relationships in my interviews, because at the beginning I only did guest interviews and I
Mhm.
really just led with, this person is cool, I want to have a conversation with them. That's the only thing that was like tick the box. And that led to amazing growth, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love what you're saying of like just finding that, like that thing in common, and then sometimes it can be a vibe and sometimes it can be super strategic of like, this person has the same type of client that I do, let's see if we can like mutually help each other or just talk about what we do,
Yeah.
right, and get to know each other.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're building like a community. It's about building connections with people who you want to connect with other people in your life, and it's
Hmm.
like a virtual community even if you're not
Right,
in the same chat rooms with each other or the same
right,
online communities like Facebook or LinkedIn. You can connect with people on LinkedIn. I always try to get everybody connected with me on LinkedIn who I want to connect with, and click their bell, follow them,
right,
click their
right.
bell, so that if they do post, I can comment and I can
Yeah.
engage with them, and I can kind of like build reciprocity by sharing their content with my friends and my network and stuff like that. And that, building the reciprocity thing is where the referrals come from. And it's not
Mhm.
like you're doing something with the idea that you'll get something back, but if you like that person and you share core values and you want, like, if I'm trying to tear down the patriarchy and I meet a bunch of other like-minded people who want to tear down the patriarchy, I want to lift them up, and that
Right.
feels good. And then they end up thinking of you when they see something that maybe you would like, or have a client
Mhm.
that they think you should meet. In
Mhm.
fact, I think you're talking to my friend Melissa Zimmerman soon. You should have her on the podcast because she's been a health and wellness writer for the last 10 years or so. And she's got a lot to say about like simplifying content strategy as well.
Right.
And we've both experienced the overwhelm that comes with feeling like you have to do all the things in
Right.
marketing. And like for me, relationship marketing, it came down to like, this is the one thing I do really well. So I almost melted down a couple of years ago and like fired all my clients, and I was like, I'm going to have to get a job again because I hate what I'm doing. And I'd been working in inbound marketing for a lot of years, and so when I started trying to, like, I was doing trying to do inbound marketing for myself, right? And I just, like, I hated it and it felt horrible, and I never wanted to blog for myself, and yet I'm telling everybody else that this is what you should do, and here's your
Yeah.
SEO plan and all this. And then I realized, I listened to an episode of the Biz Chicks podcast with Natalie Ekdahl, and it was a relationship marketing episode. And I just had this flash. I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been doing this whole time. I never even had a website most of my career.
Right.
People just referred me because they knew what I was doing, and they knew why it was good, and who I was at my core. You got to know them well enough. So I only had 2 or 3 referral partners that whole time that would send me business.
Right.
And that's really all it takes. Like, I think that's a misconception that people have, is that it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
Totally.
a person game. It's a people game.
Yeah.
And it should be fun. We should, like, I love talking to you that first time we met on Lunch Club, and now we're talking again, and it should be fun.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, to back to your point, like deciding who not to talk to, I think that also comes back to knowing who you are and what you value, and that helps steer your boundaries. I realized at some point a couple of years ago that I was like, I know I need to put more boundaries in place with clients, but like, what do I even want to put in place? And that only came clear when I got real clear on my core values. And so
Mhm.
now, if a client like threatens, a connection of any kind threatens like my core values of freedom and connection and authenticity, I'm good just to say, I don't think this is a good fit.
Mhm.
Good luck to you, sir or ma'am, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's okay. No is what they say, a full sentence.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny how like when we open up our network, or like we open ourselves up to others, it actually forces us to get really clear about who we are, right? And writing down those core values. I've never thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense to me, because if you don't have that clear sense of like coreness, then it's really hard to get a clear sense of what the other person is about, right? And
Yeah.
distinguishing that in the other person. And suddenly there's so much peace in that, because you're like, this is who I am, and peace to you, but
Yeah.
that's not like vibing with who you are. So it's all
Totally.
good.
And as women, I think we're raised with so much expectation of so many shoulds.
Yeah.
Like you should be polite, you should be, smile more or whatever. Like, and then, if you're somebody who's really like, if you're neurodivergent or super like creative and society kind of wants you to be in this box, you grow up kind of not even realizing that this part of you that's really creative or strategic is a gift, right? And so you can, like, I found myself kind of trying to do this, like follow this formula that was placed. This is what a marketing person does, and this is how we do this, and these are the types of clients that I need. But I didn't feel like I was doing like the right thing for me. So I got
Right.
kind of caught up in trying to figure out what my self-limiting beliefs were.
Right.
But I realized that even if I could get unstuck by reprogramming those self-limiting beliefs and like all of the messaging, like rewriting the messaging that wasn't working for me, I still wouldn't know which direction to go. I
Right.
could go full speed ahead, but I wouldn't know which direction to go unless I was clear on my core values. And
Mm-hmm.
that steers which direction you want to go. And it
Yeah.
makes it really easy to know what to say no to
Right.
and who to say no to. Because it's pretty obvious when you start looking at people in with the lens of core values online, people, the language that we use and the topics that we care about, that we talk about on LinkedIn or on our
Yeah.
website, they reveal what we care about and who we are. And if we know who to look for, it's easy to connect with those people.
Yeah. Totally. And I love what you're saying about it's not a numbers game, because there's so many other
No.
types of marketing where you hear that it's a numbers game, it's a numbers game. This
Yeah.
is the opposite. It's like you could have your group of people, which could be anywhere from like 50 to 70 to 100, maybe a little more, depending on like how much you can handle, right? But
Yeah.
that's it. And then you just maintain and continue to water and just have great conversations with those people.
Yeah.
And it's true, like the contacts I've made over the years, the ones that send me clients and I send them clients are the same ones. And we're, sending each other like happy birthday, or like
Yeah.
if someone had a baby, like congratulations, that sort of thing. And that's, I'm not going to say it's like easier necessarily, because everything also, it reminds me of what you're saying, like with marketing, everyone's like, what's the easy like shortcut? I'm like, let's not look at it like that. Let's look at it like what's just naturally like happening, where it's like, I can do this, I can maintain consistently this type of marketing, or
Yeah.
this way of whatever moving moving contacts and things like that, and it's easy for me, right? Or it feels
Yeah.
good. So maybe for you, for someone listening, maybe it isn't relationship marketing, but I will say there's just nothing quite like getting a referral that's like they're ready to buy, like they
Hmm.
just,
And they are.
that trust is already, like trust exchange is there. And so they come to you and they're like, this person recommended you, I'm ready. And it's like, wow, that's such a nice client,
It
versus,
is.
and they're filtered already through the other person. So, they're a good fit, in most
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah, higher
Um,
conversion rates and a better fit typically. Because if you know somebody, like even at this point, you and I know each other well enough that I know who I wouldn't send to you
mhm.
because they don't share your core values or their outlook on maybe simplifying marketing and reducing overwhelm is not the same as yours.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
I think that too, like you said, not everybody's jam is going to be relationship marketing, and that's fine, that's great. Some people love posting on social and
Mhm.
creating graphics and having like posting things they're thinking about and stuff. I don't actually like posting on social very much. I prefer to have conversations in the comments
Mhm.
or cop on a quick Zoom call.
Mhm.
It just comes down to like what feels good to you and how that's a little bit your personality too. I don't have a very organized, structured personality. I don't know if you've ever done the Colby A index. It's a
No, I
it's
don't think.
not I guess it's not like exactly a personality test. It measures conation, which is another measurement of your like cognitive brain part of your brain, and it
Mm.
measures like how you take action, how you solve problems if you're
Oh,
left to your own
cool.
devices. Are you really super organized? Do you gather all the information and then make a plan, or you just kind of like fly by the seat of your pants and take what information comes along, right? Do you stay on the same course, or do you switch directions a lot as you see
Right.
information come in? And I'm totally like, I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person. If I see something interesting, I'll go down the rabbit hole until I find something, or
Right.
not find something.
Right.
But if you're a really structured person, you might want to put a plan in place. You might be able
Mhm.
to, blog every single day or post every single day. And I think the relationship marketing thing too works best when you're a service-based entrepreneur, and you don't need, like, if you have a low cost product that you sell online, you need to sell more of those to
Yeah.
make ends meet. If you have a high value product or service that you sell to a handful of customers and maybe they're on retainer, you don't need as many ideal fit clients.
Hmm.
You just have to make them happy, and they have to be, a good
The
fit.
results. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It reminds me a little bit of like the human design as well, structure. It talks about how you
Yeah.
take action, how you make decisions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So for the people who are structured, or like you were saying, there's like some relationships where it's like you click and you don't know why or how, it doesn't matter. I want to talk with this person once in a while. They make me feel good, blah, blah, blah. Then there's like the more strategic approach, which I find is really helpful because, for example, again, me as an SEO expert, web developers, virtual assistants, web designers, marketing coaches, they all get SEO. They might not even understand exactly, but they get that it's important. And they're talking to their clients about SEO, but they don't want to do SEO. So
Right.
those types of businesses and contacts are perfect for me because they understand the value of what I do. They work with clients who are like literally ready to use SEO, especially with the web developer. Like they finish the website, they don't want to do SEO. They want to finish that project. And like sometimes they have like a maintenance package or whatever, but they don't really want to touch that part because they don't like it. So that's just like a perfect like symbiotic relationship, whatever,
Yeah.
like the whale and the little birds on the whale eating the germs or whatever, like
Exactly.
those.
I kind of think of them in two different camps of types of people. So we've got like, that's, you're talking about like complementary service providers. You guys
Yeah.
share a type of client. I
Yes.
serve women entrepreneurs who are in the service based industry, right? If you do as well,
Mm.
and you are specialized enough that you
Mhm.
only do this one thing for this type of person,
Yeah.
then you can refer everything else out and focus on just what you're really great at. I
Right.
don't create content strategies for any people, bleh, people anymore. I
Right.
will
Right.
call somebody I know who's a great content strategist who shares my core values and I know my client would enjoy working with, and we
Right.
either white label it or we tag team it together, or I refer
Right.
it out and say, here, talk to this person. It
Right.
kind of depends on what your strategy is. If you're wanting to build like a back of the office kind of business where you don't have to deal with clients and you just want to white label, or whether you
Right.
want to build your thought leadership and be known as the person, and then you talk about that with people. And then there's
Right.
also like the spheres of influence or centers of influence. I've heard it phrased both ways. And these are the people that have influence over your ideal client. So
Right.
business strategists
Yep.
who help women entrepreneurs in the service-based industry, or health coaches build their business. Those are people
Hmm.
who have influence over who my client, how they get those problems solved for their client
Right.
and who solves it. Or podcasters. They have
Hmm.
an audience. If that's your ideal audience, then they're a center of influence.
Hmm.
You don't need to be friends with all of them, but like
Right. Right.
one or two really great
Yeah.
relationships can go a long way.
Yeah. I would say, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but what I recommend clients to do is look at who their clients hire apart from them. So like who are the other people who they want to hire, they understand. And then is there a way that you can form strategic alliances with those types of people?
Yeah.
Another one that came to mind for me is like PR people, like anybody who's doing like PR, because that's also kind of related to SEO in terms of backlinking.
Totally.
But let's say like if someone listening is like a nutritionist or like a holistic nutritionist, for them it could be like maybe a yoga instructor or even like an acupuncturist or a doctor, like a doctor, I don't know, someone who's like specialized but not in nutrition. Those could
Mm-hmm.
be other relationships where you build because maybe someone needs acupuncturist help. So you're like, you refer clients to them. And then the acupuncturist is like, I know a great nutritionist, and they refer clients to you. So there it's like you
Yep.
both, it's like a win-win, and you're able to pass clients to each other very easily. As long as, again, you know what the other person does very clearly, and you're able to distinguish the value, right, of their
Yeah.
service.
Or a fitness trainer and a nutritionist are a great
Yes, that
combination
one's good.
together, because I was
Yeah,
a fitness trainer back in the day. That's how I got into the wellness writing. And
right.
I was not comfortable giving meal plans like for people who
Yeah,
had any kind of health issues, or I don't think I would even do it at this point because it's just so complicated. And
yeah,
I would definitely have referred that out,
yeah,
and would have not expected a nutritionist necessarily to be, and there are crossover there
yeah.
potentially, but they're not necessarily going to be a trainer either. And I
Hmm.
think there's something to be said for specializing in that way, because you
Yeah.
can build a richer
Hmm.
referral network if you're not trying to do it's really a red flag to me when people say I do all the things,
Yeah.
especially in marketing, because we're not nobody's good at all the things. And especially today, the way that content saturation and like online business, everybody's online trying to make a buck, and
Yeah.
it's so hard to figure out who's good at what. And by this point everyone's been burned by somebody online
Right.
saying they could do this thing really well and they maybe couldn't.
Hmm.
um, I mean, it's happened to me even with people that I've known fairly well, that I've purchased services from, that I was like, well, maybe that wasn't the best call. But but it's because they're trying to do too many things instead of the one thing that they're really great at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it happens a lot with SEO. Like I think it's unfortunate, but and in SEO there's specializations, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so I would say, thinking about those other services that your client hires or is interested in, and
Yeah, definitely.
seeing how you can, like, connect with those. And I love what you said at the beginning of, like, giving before expecting anything in return, like just looking at like what relationships you could easily, send clients to or build those relationships with, without it being like, okay, how, this person now owes me one or something weird like that, right? um
Yeah. I mean, building reciprocity can be as simple as, like, if you are trying to say connect with somebody who is fairly influential on LinkedIn and they don't know who you are and
mhm.
they don't have a lot of time, and you're just like another person trying to get their attention, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to be somebody who you're probably going to be able to reach out to with a message unless you have something very intimate in common that you
Yeah.
can then, like, because there has to be context and some kind of
Yes.
alignment that's obvious, right? But
Yeah,
if there's
yeah,
nothing really obvious and you just think they're super cool and you think you would, like, you have this sense that you'd like to know them in some way,
yeah.
you can still connect with them, not connect with them directly, but like follow them, click the
Hmm.
bell so that you see what they post and what they're talking
Yeah.
about. And then you can, like, if you see that they've posted within that first hour of LinkedIn's algorithm, you can comment and like have conversations in their comments to try to, open up that algorithm and get more visibility for them. That's even
Yeah.
like, that's a give. That's, I'm
Hmm.
helping you get more
Yeah.
visibility for your content, and then they see you over and over. And there's this
Hmm.
thing called the mere exposure effect, where just the act of seeing someone over and over and over again, or becoming more familiar with something, breeds preference. So
Hmm.
over time, if I see your posts over and over and over again, I'm going to naturally prefer you and your posts over somebody else,
Right.
unless there's already a negative like connotation there.
Right.
So just staying in front of them, at some point there's going to be some part of the conversation that's going to align enough that you can connect and send a message and say, hey, I loved what you said here, I think we're really aligned, let's connect on LinkedIn, let's connect here.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
I don't, most people will connect if there's even a little bit of inkling that
Mhm.
that you're on the same page somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I never even thought about that, how commenting on someone posts, you're like giving, right? I never thought
Yeah.
about it, but it's true. And then over time, that person, yeah, you're giving them the opportunity to build that relationship. And if you like we all have that person we admire online that would just, like, every post just, blows our mind. It's
Yeah.
something we naturally do anyway. And so it can just be a way to, like, yeah, build that relationship. Something that I've done recently that's worked really well, this is like another tip for people listening, is I go to like a conference, or like I'm in a mastermind or some sort of event that's like group, and then I save all the names. Like I try and like either get an email list, or sometimes I'll like
Mhm.
screenshot the Zoom like group,
Ah,
obviously
smart.
just for private. use. And then I'll email people individually and I'll be like,
Yeah.
hey, I saw you were at the summit. I had a great time. Or like I'll try and sometimes I'll like do deeper work and I'll like make notes about different conversations that happen. So I'll be like, I love that comment you did on this for this session. Like, I mean, that would be really good. But then I email them and that people love that because then they want to connect with you. And I've built so many amazing, again, maybe I send 20 emails and out of the 20 maybe I have like 5 calls, and then out of the 5 there's like really 2 that like just hit, really here
Yeah.
in the heart. And so that's the numbers game part of it, but I would say like that's been such a great strategy for me because I like just, I don't know, I love it. I'm already like in this network of women that I love, and then I get to find those one-to-one connections that just feel really fun. And so that's another way you can approach that, of like an
Yeah.
event in common or even like a paid thing. Like if you like a free webinar, but it can also be like a paid training. I've done this where it's like there's like a
Hmm.
Facebook group or something, and then I'll message people in that group and I'll be like, hey, we're both in this group. Like, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. And then we'll have a call. And then it turns into like a great online connection and a friend.
Yeah, I think if we started looking at it more as friendships, then
Yes.
we need to take a little bit of the separation between business and personal out. And
Yeah.
I see it, it drives me crazy. People on LinkedIn saying we should be more professional on here. But like I bring my person to work with me. Like I am the
Right.
same person at work. And if I'm not the same person at work, then I have a problem with my core values because I'm compartpartmentalizing.
Right.
I get that we're not like showing up in our pajamas or whatever,
Hey,
but
some of
like
us are.
I, you can only see me from the waist up right now. I could still be in my pajamas.
Exactly.
But like honestly, the people I and that's another thing is choosing who you want to work with. Your
Yeah.
clients, I mean, that's another, we're talking about building networks in terms of relationship marketing. But if you Google relationship marketing, what comes up is primarily nurturing clients to encourage, like nurturing that
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
encourage word of mouth and repeated business.
Yeah.
And that's great, but it only works if you have really great clients that you enjoy
Yeah.
working with. So that means saying no sometimes, or saying like, gosh, I think, and this is why I think it's okay to like connect with lots of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if they're not perfectly aligned with you, that doesn't mean that you just ignore them or whatever. You
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
don't necessarily nurture that relationship, because I often will refer somebody who is not a good fit to somebody who's a better fit,
Yeah.
who's like does what I do, but
Mm-hmm.
is not necessarily like with the same approach. Because that's
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about specializing and niching, we tend to just think of the industry and the service, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we all bring our own special approach to
Yeah.
however we do what we do. And that's another reason just not to worry about the competitors. Don't get
Mhm.
caught up in imposter syndrome or like what the competition is doing. Just
Yeah.
stop. Like focus on what you do and how you do it, because nobody's going to come to the table with the exact knowledge and history and approach that you have.
Yeah.
And the client's either going to resonate with you or with them, and if they don't resonate with you, they were never yours. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you can't win them
Yeah.
all.
It's so good. No, it's so true. And I think it's just like, yeah, a waste of energy to like focus on the competition. I mean, unless
Mm-hmm.
if you find someone inspiring in the competition, great, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's enough to go around, and there's just different types of ways of working, and just your communication style already like distinguishes you. One last question I guess I had was, how do you keep in touch with your contacts? Like, so this is one thing I'm working on, and I struggle with is like, I want to stay top of mind. I want to just stay like in contact with my people, but sometimes I feel weird, like being like, hey, how's it going? Like, like just like random. Something that's been working lately is like, we haven't talked lately. I've been wanting to reconnect with my network. I just put something like that, like, how
Mm-hmm.
are you? And so that's felt like light and breezy and like, just how are things going? But do you have any strategies there, or do you have any like anything you
Yeah.
approach? Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple things periodically, if I feel like I get a feeling like I've forgotten somebody, or
Yeah.
I'm like, if I've been kind of in a down cycle, because like you said, well, I don't go through and like make a list of people and connect. Mine's a little bit more like agile. So I'll maybe
Yeah.
get down a couple rabbit holes in one day and connect with like 40 people. And
Right.
then I won't connect with anybody new for like a month.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Right.
really
Right.
kind of all over the place. But if I
Yeah.
feel like I've been in a down cycle and I should connect with somebody I haven't, I'll go back through my LinkedIn messages. I try to keep all my messages in LinkedIn if I can, because email's really messy. And I
Mm-hmm.
find that I'm like, where did I talk to that person? What were
Right.
we talking about? You know, how
Yeah.
did we even meet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like between Facebook and
Yeah.
LinkedIn and email and everything. So I like to connect with whoever I can on LinkedIn, but it also depends on where your ideal customers are too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and where are
Right.
your connections?
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably the biggest secret I have is mindfulness meditation,
Mm.
because your brain's making connections all the time between disparate ideas and people, and we don't always recognize when those thoughts come through our mind. But if we
Right.
can get really cognizant of what our thoughts are and recognize more of them, then we recognize when our brain is listening to a podcast and we say to ourselves quietly inside our brains, oh, you know, so and so does that, or so and so would really like this. Or you just start to connect things. And then I'll send the podcast to that person and say, hey, I
Right.
heard this podcast. It made me think of you. I think you'd love it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's reciprocity and contact.
Right. 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 Right.
Um,
That's good. Yeah.
Making connections between other people is another way I stay top of mind.
Yeah.
If I think anybody could benefit from meeting or being introduced to anybody else, I'll make an introduction. Again, reciprocity and just keeping in touch.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
So
always trying to. I mean, there's certain, again, like the partner businesses, there's certain businesses that go like peanut butter and jelly. And it's really
yeah.
easy for me to like, that's a copywriter, that's an ads person, those two people. And then I just like rotate or like I'll find different connections there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, sometimes I'm kind of like you, like flying the seat of my pants, but I do like to take notes. And I've been using HubSpot, and so it lets you like, I'll just write down like what we talked about, and it'll be things like their dog got an operation or something, or like just
Mm-hmm.
random things about their personal life. But that's so helpful because later I'll search and I'll find two people who are like dog lovers, but they also have kind of interesting businesses that could potentially like do things together. And so I'm like, that's what I include in my intro, and that kind of personalization really draws
Yeah,
people's attention. So
totally.
I guess you have to find like whatever system works for you, whether it's like a notebook, paper, or just, yeah, meditation slash some
Whatever, it's
notes.
kind of like you said, figuring out what works for you. And like, we remember what's important, right? We remember
Yeah.
details and things that are important to us. And if we're, you know, back to the personal thing, if we're just sitting here having a conversation about business and where do you come from and what do you do and who are your ideal clients, I mean, yeah, that's all important. But if we don't ever get to the part about your dog having surgery, or
Yeah.
like, I love it when people's dogs are roaming around in the background of our Zooms, because mine's usually rolling around on the couch behind me and we end up talking about our dogs, and,
Yeah.
you know, we bond over that. I
Yeah.
connected with a gal in Australia the other day who commented on a post strictly because she had a Frenchie on her lap, and my Frenchton is on my lap in my picture, which I know you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to have just your headshot, but I don't care. That's my dog. I love my dog. So we have to get to that personal stuff to care enough
Absolutely.
to remember what these people's details of their lives are. And
Yeah.
yeah, it really bonds you to somebody. Like, you really appreciate when someone cares about a detail of your life enough to remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. It just changes, it makes it colorful, and you can use that information to, yeah, just understand what they prioritize, or like what are
Yep.
the things they love. And that's something else I try and understand with all my contacts, are like, what are the things they just love, like, is it like, yeah, nature or coffee, or just like people have
Yeah.
that thing. It's like, okay, and how can I understand that better, because that information can help me understand that person. So
Yeah. When I work
um
with clients to help them build their referral networks or teach them how to do relationship marketing for themselves, that's one of the first onboarding forms that I have talks about, who do you love? Like, what do you love? What do you do with your time? What do you love to talk about? What kind of books do you read? Like, our core values and what we care about, they're written all over our lives,
yeah,
whether we like it or not.
right, right,
And we just have to like turn around the mirror and take a look so that we can be clear on it, because, you know, we're in it. It's so hard for us to see ourselves clearly.
totally. Yeah. Cool. I love it. Oh, so good. So last question. This is the last one. So what would you say to someone who's like, I like this. I like this conversation. I want to get started with this relationship marketing thing. What would be like one step that someone could start doing today to like just start the ball rolling of their network and their relationship marketing?
I think I would probably take a look at your existing relationships, the ones that you enjoy the
Yeah.
most and that are the most, professionally beneficial, mutually beneficial, the ones that just click, and then maybe try to deconstruct why that works. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you care about that that person cares about? And, um, if it's a professional relationship that has resulted in referrals, like I have one friend who we've referred business back and forth forever. And I think like she said recently, like 90% of her revenue in the last couple of years has come from referrals from me
Right.
because
Wow.
I know her really, we've known each other for 25 years. I know her really, really well. And so we started talking like, why does this work so well?
Right.
And so like work backwards and figure out the relationships that you have that do work, even in your personal life. Why does it work?
Right.
What do you care about?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, what's working and how can I learn from that, right? Don't
Yeah.
break
And
what's
then
not broken.
either get on LinkedIn and start like searching for people who care about the same things you care about, or get into Facebook groups like Women Entrepreneur Facebook groups and get into the conversation and see what are people talking about? Do I agree? Do I not agree? And then you'll find yourself on one side of the fence agreeing with people
Mm-hmm.
who and actually I do have a freebie I can share with you if you want. This is helpful. It's like a Facebook, it's a way to reverse engineer what you know about and what you care about on Facebook. If you're in Facebook groups talking in the comments,
Right.
um, there's a spreadsheet and you can go in and you mine your previous comments for as far back as you want. And you
Right.
pick out topics and you say, this is, copy and paste in the spreadsheet. This is what I said. This was the question. What is the topic and what's my stance here?
Right.
And you can kind of see trends on like what you're really vocal about and what you're willing to share information on to kind of help highlight your expertise too. You start to see
Mm,
that you're on one side of an issue and that you're probably aligned with the people who think that same way. And then it's
mm.
really easy to just comment and say, hey, we should connect. I think we've got a lot in common.
Yeah, it's so much about self-awareness, right? We think it's about the other person, but
Right.
there's
It's
so much
not
self-awareness and self just yeah, knowing who you are, yeah, know thyself, that comes
totally.
into play.
And that's such a like lifelong journey. My coach Natalie Ekdahl, I was telling you about her in the BizTricks podcast. She says, she told me recently, she's like, this never ends, right? Like the mindfulness thing or the mindset thing, and like doing all this work on yourself and constantly improving in the self-awareness, it's a lifelong journey. And that was like super comforting to me because I'm like, when do I get to the end of this? When am I done here? I'm like, okay, I can just relax now because this is never going to end. I'm always going to be
Yeah,
able to learn more about myself. And that helps me navigate the world better because I know what I want and what I don't want. And it
yeah,
makes it easier to connect and build relationships online easier.
yeah. I love it. Yeah, so good. Ah, so good. That's why I have a podcast. It's so easy for me to do that. Cool. Oh my God, this is so good. All right, so why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can hang out with you and anything. I think you have like a strategic session that you help people with their network as well.
Well, I have a strategy call. You can purchase a strategy call if you want to just talk about, it's 45 minutes of strategy and we'll problem solve whatever we've got. And then I also have some coaching and some strategy packages that help build your network, where I actually go out and build relationships that are aligned with me and you. Since I only connect with clients, I only work with clients who are very well aligned with me. They tend to be well aligned with the rest of my network. So I will
Right.
go build relationships and help introduce you to people who would be beneficial for you to network with. But the easiest way is just to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just LinkedIn, whack Cara Steinmann, and
Cool.
say hi.
Right, I forgot you don't have a site.
I do have a site now. This
Oh,
is a recent
okay.
development. It's just carasteinmann.com.
Okay, cool. I'll include
So,
the links to that in the show notes and also the link to that freebie.
yeah, I'll
Because I
send you
think
that.
yeah, a lot of people would find that helpful.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really different approach to relationship. Well, it's not a different approach. I guess it gives it a little bit more form. And maybe some of you are like, I'm already doing some of this stuff and never thought about it. And it's a way, it is like a legit way
Yeah,
of getting clients. And it's very
yeah,
powerful.
it is. And there's some strategy involved, and like you learn, the more you do it, the more you learn. I had to kind of reverse engineer what I was doing because somebody asked me how to do it. And I was like, oh God, I don't know. How do I do that? How did that work? So I
Yeah.
kind of went backwards and like picked out the recipe so that I
Yeah.
could see what was happening. And some people are just, it's easy for some people, and some people just have to think about it a little bit more. But I mean, we're all people.
Yeah.
We're kind of built to connect.
Right. Yeah, yeah, totally. It's human. It's very human.
Yeah,
Well, thanks,
exactly.
Kara. This was great.
Yeah. Thank you.